If you're over 40 and struggling with weight gain, fatigue, and menopausal symptoms, this morning routine could be the game changer you've been looking for. Hi, I'm Dr. Betty Murray, and after 20 years of helping women navigate perimenopause and menopause, and especially hormonal changes, I found what you do in that first 15 to 30 minutes after you wake can make or break your entire hormone balance for the day. And what I'm going to share with you is not a complicated biohacking, expensive supplements protocol. It's straightforward, science backed routine that targets these hormonal imbalances. All right, so let's dig into your awesome morning routine and how we're going to retool the first 15 minutes of your day so it helps you start to balance your key hormones. So, the first thing that we need to understand is our mornings are designed to wake us up and cause a spike of your cortisol within the first 2 hours of waking. So, there are some very important things that need to happen during that time. So, the first thing is you need to have a wake cycle and a sleep cycle, ideally, that matches the current timeline of the planet in the area you're living in. And that means you need to wake up with the sun and you need to go to bed with the moon, meaning as the sun goes down, you get ready for bed and go to bed in a relatively short period of time after sundown. So in the summertime, that's usually going to be around 10 o'clock. In the wintertime, it might actually be a little bit earlier in the day. Now, if we look at morning routine, the morning you want to wake up as the sun is coming up, if not a little bit in front of it. But what you don't want to do is wake up 4 hours after sunrise. And so, the very first thing we need to do to help balance our hormones is we need to have early morning sunlight on our eyeballs as the sun's coming up. When that hits your eyeballs, it actually resets your body's clock and actually tells the body when to produce melatonin later in the evening. So, early morning sunlight helps create melatonin fluctuation in the evening that helps signal your body it's time to go to bed. Number two, I would add grounding to this. I would also take a moment to ground your body. So when our body, our feet, or parts of our body touch the ground, we actually have an electron exchange with the earth. And that actually helps set our body's electromagnetic activity. And so grounding can also help a lot. So that means going outside without shoes on, or if you're outside, then taking your shoes off and sort of, gripping the ground and having that connection with Mother Nature. And especially if you can get that into a grassy or sand area where you're making direct contact with the soil. Hydration, right? So the first thing to understand is by the time we actually get up in the morning, we have lost through respiration and the body sort of think of it as the janitorial services of the body. We have lost at least 32 ounces of fluids, right, to the body's kind of cleanup processes. So we start at a dehydration level in most cases, or we're kind of teetering on that level. So the other thing is to make sure that you get a big glass of water in the morning before you do coffee or anything else like that, because it can help balance the fluids you need back to normal levels. Also, that gets rid of things like eye bags and other things, because if you're chronically dehydrated, your body's actually going to hold on to fluids. It's going to hold on to sodium, and you're going to feel more puffy because your body doesn't have adequate hydration. How can I help control my cortisol rhythm and use it to my advantage so I have better energy, have better metabolism, and feel better overall? When you work out in the morning, what we're doing is we're taking that stress chemistry, that peak of cortisol that happens in the first 2 hours, and we're putting it to good use. So here's the way to think about it. The body takes stress and it takes all the information into the brain, into the hypothalamus and the pituitary in the brain. And it takes in chemical messages like your hormones and your vitamin levels and all this other stuff. It takes in your senses, like your sense of smell, your sense of taste, all of those other things. And then it takes in your subjective experience, what you see, what you hear, what you're thinking. And it puts all that together in the brain. And the hypothalamus then decides, what is it going to do about it? So if our bodies, from a natural standpoint, takes all that information in and it breaks it down to two very simple questions. Actually, I'll call it three. It says, do I need to fight for my life? Do I need to flee? Or do I need to freeze? right? And when I freeze, in most cases, it's also like, hey, go get a sandwich or a donut while you're doing it. So if I naturally have a cortisol rhythm that is going to incline and go up in the morning, exercise gives me the physical outlet that looks like the fleeing or fighting activity that my body anticipates it's going to get. So it starts to normalize our physiology and biology to our subjective experience and chemical experience being interpreted by the hypothalamus and the pituitary in the brain. So when I get up and exercise, that helps my body go, cool, I got something to do with the stress that's automatically coming up because it's supposed to peak within 2 hours of waking. Now I'm good. I've got a little burst of energy. My heart rate's up. I've moved things. My lymphatics moved. I overall have a better sense of energy and I can make it through the day. So that would be number 4, right? Physically exercising in the morning. Now, I want to talk about one other major hormone saboteur that is really going to get, probably lambasted. Nobody's going to like this, right? So, one of the most hidden saboteurs of your energy and hormonal imbalance is the snooze button, right? Snooze on your phone, snooze button on your old school clock. So when we go to bed, we go into sleep cycles, and the sleep cycle starts with drowsiness to sleep, and you have kind of a light sleep that will then drop into a deep sleep. And you may cycle in and out of those a couple times, usually early in the evening as you start to go to sleep. So if you go to bed at 10, those are those early sleep cycles between 10 and like 1 a.m. And then what happens later in that morning time is we start to cycle also into REM and non-REM sleep. So deep sleep is where we consolidate memory, right? So this is where you actually consolidate and remember the things that you read about that day, heard about that day. We get memory going. Now, REM sleep is where we consolidate and sort of process our emotional memories from that day. So how many of you have the witching hour? You're waking up at like 3 a.m., can't get back to sleep for several hours, and then you fall back asleep at the time in which you're supposed to wake up. Often that means there's something going on with that REM and non-REM sleep, and we're losing some of that quality sleep where our body's processing emotion, which usually makes us feel a little frayed the next day. So what do we do if that's happening? So what's interesting is often if we lay there for a really long time, I remember this because I had decades where I didn't sleep well, and that's actually where I ended up going back and having palate expansion. But I always remembered I would lay awake for hours. And then it's like a half hour, 45 minutes before the clock would go off from when I really needed to wake up, I would fall back asleep. And then the clock would go off, and then I'd be laying there like, oh my God, I can't peel myself off the bed. My eyes can barely open. I'm just out of it. And then I'd be like, oh, no, 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 no. No, I gotta hit the snooze for at least 15 minutes or 10 minutes because I gotta do that. And I might hit snooze several times because I woke up in this very groggy in and out of that REM sleep where I wasn't really in light sleep, which makes it easier to pull out of sleep. So when we hit that snooze button, what it does, especially as you often you don't go back into just a light sleep, you dip right back down into a deep sleep, which makes you feel more groggy the next day. And so I like to use the Mel Robbins technique here. I'm going to give her credit for it. Is when that alarm goes off, you hit it and then you count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and get up. And here's the reason why. If you do that and you don't let yourself lay there and languish in the kind of fogginess of the morning, you get the body to wake up. And then if you haul your butt outside and get some sunlight on your eyes, you help further wake up the brain and the rest of the body and reset all those rhythms. And so one of the worst things we could do is hit snooze.